Hey, good morning, folks. My name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games. I illustrate them. I publish them online. This is my Saturday morning workbench that I work on random projects. I create role-playing games. I publish them online. I've been focusing my attention on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for the past 5 years. There's a slew of links in the description down below. And we have been, for the past year, creating this document, Spelljammer Combat and Exploration. It's a deep dive into physics, combat options, and exploration for campaigns in the spelljamming setting. I created this document. We did some play testing. It played out well. I just wanted to have a deeper depth of mechanics for us to be able to conduct Spelljammer adventures in space. And hey, what's going on, Ked? So we're doing something a little bit different today. Hype time! We're doing something a little bit different today. So let me go ahead and go through, let me go ahead and check my signal, make sure I'm up and running, and then we'll get started here. So let's see, doing a mic check, 1, 2, 3. Sounds like that's coming through okay. So I'm going to hit the boosters here on all the bits. So give me just a hot second here. I've already been going through my intro spiel, but I'm out of sequence this morning. I think I'm over caffeinated, so enjoy the experience. But yeah, so I create, I've been focusing on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition here for the past 5 years. I run D&D campaigns as a DM from level 1 to 20 in about 200 to 250 hours. So the books that I create are either things that came about during the course of a campaign that I thought was cool enough to flesh out and provide to other people to play with, or when I was contemplating the next campaign, the tools didn't exist, so I had to create them. So with Spelljammer here, it was kind of a mix of both. I'm a huge Spelljammer enthusiast from the 90s, and when Wizards published in August 2022, it only took a couple minutes because there's only a few paragraphs of information about how Spelljammer Combat and Exploration works at all, that I was like, well, okay, I'm going to need to flesh this thing out. So before I get too far ahead of myself, I've just posted that I'm live on Twitter, so if you want to catch me there, you can follow me at Phil Kearney if you're still on that platform. I'm going to be launching a Discord channel on Tuesday, so you guys can keep an eye out for that. Best way to support the channel, though, honestly, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, get notifications. We've picked up more subscribers even since yesterday, so thanks a lot, folks, for taking a lot of interest in what it is that we're doing here. If you think this stuff is cool, stick around. All the stuff that I have built down in the description down below here, it all has free previews, so you're welcome to check the stuff out if you want to support me that way. Very much appreciated. So what was I saying? We create supplements. Spelljammer, I've loved it since 1989, and so when Wizards came out with 5e, it was kind of thin on content as far as like mechanical depth. Big problem that we have with 5th edition is that so many new people came into the hobby. They don't have a background knowledge of just knowing how to run games, of how to play role-playing games. And the 5th edition, I don't think they expected it to be as popular as it is. I think what they expected was to pull in all of their old grognard audience and bring them back to D&D, assuming they knew how to play. So I think they shorthanded a lot of information that's practical and useful for new budding, aspiring DMs to learn how to make judgment calls. There's this idea that rules beget rulings. If you have rules that make sense, that are easy to integrate, but leave a lot of room open for you to play with, it allows the DM or whoever, the narrator, to have the freedom to make their own rulings in particular circumstances that have a frame of reference from the rules that are in whatever rulebook they're using. And when Wizards doesn't provide in-depth rules using 5th edition mechanics on how to run campaigns in space, it comes back with a shitload of questions. So that's what we're doing here. This Spelljammer Combat and Exploration supplement is 106 pages of rules that you can use to create your own rulings. And all these giant blank space. So I playtest this thing. It comes out well. We then build all the mechanics. We type it all out. We send it off to an editor who gives it back to us. And you're supposed to say things this way. Thank you. We then drop it into a layout program. I use Microsoft Word. because I'm a cheap hack, but you can be one too. It's easy to do, and this is what we're trying to do with this channel, is show you how you can build things and get into the hobby yourself with very minimal costs. So when we get back to text, we break it down per page. All these gaps that I have in the page are where we drop in illustrations. So normally at this point in my stream, I would say, you know, we took all these gaps and then we take a page, we drop it here into Photoshop, and then we start illustrating, and then I would get to work on illustrating. But the next step after finishing an illustration is to take it back and drop it into the Word document so that we can actually integrate the images with the text. You can see here, this is a text file, and this is the image file. So the way that I make image files is here. I'll blip this one out. This is how a hack like me makes pages, and we'll just do it really simple. We'll go to insert, and then we'll go to shapes, and then we'll take a square, and we'll do that, and then we'll go to shape format, and we'll go to size, and we'll go to height equals 11, and then we'll go to width equals 8.5, and now we go to arrange, and we go to position. And hold on, we want to go to align over here. We want to left align to the page, left align, and then top align. And now we have a giant blank spot on our page. We can then go in here, we can right click, we can get rid of the outline, and we can go to fill. We can replace the fill with the picture. The picture we're going to pull from a file. Can't see. Hey, right on. Thank you, Ked. Thanks for swinging by, my guy. Let's see. Let's go to combat. Let's see. Done. There we go. Page 38. And then bam, it gets dropped in. And then we right click and we send to back. Arrow equals set behind text. And now I can still manipulate text and the pictures on the background. So that's how, I mean, when I actually build this to help reduce my file size, I'll actually trim down the image of the document down to just the size of the pictures across the frame. So I'll be able to create a little box here to drop it in. But for what we're doing right now, a full page is fine. I'll go back and optimize this when we add all of the pictures in, which we've been illustrating for the past 6 months here on stream. You can check in the full playlist here. If you click on that, you'll see all 283 other episodes prior to this one, if you want to step into that madness. The book cover that I showed here, actually, we created back on episode 15. So if you want to see us creating this, you're welcome to go into the Wayback Machine and check that out. But I wanted to show off this process because this isn't a very, I don't think people are really interested in this process overall, but it's part of the process of building a book. So it's a necessary component, and I need to suss this part out. So I wanted to spend a few minutes here. We're looking at squadron weapon mechanics. So a squadron is when a character is, or a commander is issuing commands for multiple ships to move and make attacks. The way that the book is written is that characters can play various roles. The 4 major roles that exist inside the game are that of a pilot, a siege commander, a squadron commander, and the support role. And this is the action economy that we know about inside of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. There's object interactions, which you get 1 free object interaction per round. There's verbal commands, which are free actions. You can just speak to people and it doesn't actually eat up any action economy. Then you have your standard action, which can be broken into attacks. You have a bonus action, which often can be used for an attack, as well as other things. And then there's reactions. So verbal actions, interactions, actions, bonus actions, and reactions. And both bonus actions, actions, and reactions can potentially be used to make attacks. So, having said that, the different roles that a character can play is that of a pilot while you're focusing on a spell-jamming helm to pilot a ship. The siege commander option, when you take verbal command, you order siege weapon crews to fire and load on your commands. The support role uses their action economy to help other characters boost what they're doing by like using targeting to give them advantage on attack rolls. or like ward the pilot. So if you are focusing on a spell amplifier, Spelljammer helm, or an orrery station, you can help take damage for the pilot, or help focus to like if they lose concentration because of damage, you can help them refocus so that they can regain control of the helm and not leave the ship waylaid until you regain concentration. And then there's the role of the squadron commander, which is basically a blend of the pilot role in which you are, stepping back for a second, the siege commander can order multiple weapons to fire together, like in a silo, but then you're most likely going to have to get all of those siege weapons to reload their weapon and line up another group shot. So it takes some coordinating to do that, which is what we express with the reload die. For those that aren't already indoctrinated into the reload mechanic, when you make an attack, well, here, let's scroll down here so you guys can see it. Command checks. So depending on your level or the CR of the creature, determines the rank of a commander that your character is or the creature is, and the rank of the character is going to determine the type of proficiency die they're going to use. The player, the Dungeon Master's Guide has a variant rule that if you've seen Essence 20 by Renegade Games, the Essence 20 system, like for Power Rangers, Transformers, G.I. Joe, they use the proficiency die as their standard model, but they don't do a lot with it. So what we've done with it is, so for those that don't know what a proficiency die is, at first level you have a +2 proficiency bonus that you add to ability checks and attack rolls when you are using a skill or tool or weapon that you are proficient with. So the die roll, it's a d20 plus an ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. The proficiency die replaces the proficiency bonus. So it'd be a d20 plus your ability check plus the proficiency die that you roll at first level, +2 bonus, that's a d4 die roll. At 17th level, you have a +6 proficiency bonus, that becomes a d12. The average on the d12 is going to be about a 6 or a 7, so it actually comes out ahead, but sometimes you can roll just a 1, and that's horrible, and it's going to impact you. Sometimes you can roll a 12, which is going to burst past the bounded accuracy curve that is supposedly built into D&D 5e. So, the fun thing about a proficiency die is it is a secondary variable that is integrated into a proficiency, like a skill check or an attack roll. So when a siege commander orders a siege crew to fire a siege weapon, you roll a proficiency die instead of your proficiency bonus as part of the attack roll. Each weapon has a reload score. If your proficiency die equals or exceeds the reload score, your weapon crew automatically reloads the weapon to fire again as part of the attack action. So if you have multiple attacks per round as a commander, such as a fighter, you would then be able to, assuming that you can hit your reload score, order your weapon crews to fire multiple times. You can have multiple weapons fire together, but you add up all of their reload scores. So if you're looking at, say, a ballista, which has a native reload score of 3, if you were to order 2 ballistas to fire together, you would have one attack roll, and you would combine their reload scores, which would be a base of a reload score of 6 for both ballistas. So if you're a first level character and you order 2 ballistas to fire, but you're only rolling a d4 on your proficiency die, you're automatically going to fail the reload check. You'll fire the 2 ballistas, but neither one of them were coordinated under your command well enough for them to be able to fire and efficiently reload the weapons to do so again. At 5th level, you would have to roll a 6 on a d6 to do that. By the time you get to 17th level, on a d12, you've got a 50-50 shot at being able to fire 2 ballistas at the same time. If you fail the reload score, you can either use one of your remaining actions or you can use a reaction to command a single weapon crew to reload their weapon to be ready to fire again. So if I'm a 11th level fighter with 3 attacks per round, I can fire 2 siege weapons. If I botch my roll, I can then use my second attack to reload one of the ballistas. I can use my reaction to reload the second ballista. I'll then have one attack left over. I could then fire that silo of 2 ballista attacks again together, and if I then hit my reload score of 6, they automatically reload. If I fail that die, neither one of those weapons are readied, and they won't have the opportunity to become ready again until somebody spends action economy to get them to put their weapons back together to fire again, or until combat ends and we drop out of initiative. So if we drop out of initiative, then you'll be able to reset your weapons automatically, but you're not in combat, so who cares? So any characters using group initiative, other characters can lend their reactions and their actions to coordinate with you. So you could have 2 fighters at 11th level that have up to 4 actions they can take each to fire a weapon, and maybe your support character spends an attack to reload both of those ballistas. So your first commander can then fire the silo again, and then if the weapon botches, you can use the sidekick can use the 3rd attack and the reaction to reload those weapons again, to then be able to fire off a 3rd silo. So 2 11th level fighters can efficiently fire 2 salvos of 2 ballistas or any other siege weapon twice per round. So you can get pop, 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 pop. You can get that sequence going. If you're doing group initiative where everyone's combining their action economy together, you can just divide it up. Or you can maintain initiative in order as you're used to doing in combat. And if I cash out all of my initiative, then it's going to roll over to the next fighter, and he's then going to spend some action and reaction to reload those weapons, take command of the crew himself, and then order them to fire again. Meanwhile, each of these individual characters, each of these individual crew, as they gain ranks in proficiency themselves, they would effectively be gaining extra action economy that they become more efficient at loading and firing the weapons. So the reload die and the action economy of the commanding character or creature is dictating how frequently these weapons can fire. So, having said that, if we're looking at squadrons are effectively multiple ships that can combine to make multiple attacks together, or a single ship with multiple weapons can be fired together. But as you scale up in size away from your own deck to the larger size of your squadron, or if you have multiple squadrons, you now command a fleet of ships. A fleet is multiple squadrons, but it all uses that same scale. So the question then becomes, what is going to prevent my character from amassing a small, like a fleet of ships and then go bombard a city? Well, we spent on a previous episode that you can go check out underneath my in my list of published videos. There is the cost of maintaining lifestyles aboard a crew. And so if you're going to maintain multiple ships, you're going to have to be paying out all of these ships on a daily or seasonal basis, hundreds or even tens of thousands or potentially even millions of gold, depending on how many ships and how skilled they are to respond to you. So if you want to spend 100,000 gold pieces amassing a small fleet of ships to go attack Waterdeep, your DM is facilitating a game that allows you to do that, which means that if you can build a squadron of ships, the DM has enemy squadrons of ships that you would be using to engage at a larger scale of battle. Just like if you have minions, if you have hirelings and ogres and conjured creatures, your DM is going to naturally create larger CR threats or larger groups of low CR threats to deal with the conjured animals, your 16 wolves. The DM is going to calibrate the campaign to respond and match against the capabilities of your characters. So if you're introducing squadrons and fleets into your game, it's because the DM intends to have squadrons and fleets as your antagonists in the game. So it becomes a resource game where you can go around and create fleets of different aligned ships. Like the Light of Xerax's adventure has one of these options at the tail end of the adventure, but they don't give you any real rules about building squadrons, fleets, or how you can maintain the crews to do that. Well, this book provides you with all those details. So all that having said, I needed to find a way to be able to visualize how these squadrons work. And so that's what the illustration that we have today. So my task is to fill in the little incidental detail text here to be able to flesh out the rest of this. So just so you guys can have eyes, now that you understand how the reload mechanics work, if you observe like a ballista does D4 times 10 piercing damage, a mangonel does D6 times 10 bludgeoning damage, a trebuchet does D8 times 10 damage. It's using simple dies, but you're doing them like for example in the DMG, a trebuchet does 10 D8 damage, which is, if you want to make math easy, it's a D8 times 10 damage. A ballista does 3d10 damage. So instead of having a clunky D3 times 10, we just decided to do a D4 times 10 just to give them a break. And then the mangonel, I believe, is 5d10. So we just upped that to a D6 times 10d6, I think. I think that's what it is. So we just scaled that up to be a D6 times 10. We're just simplifying the dice so that we can make use of them. So here's how we translate this. So vessels are ships that are larger than 50 feet in size, while fighter craft are ships that are smaller than 50 feet in size. So like you can see here, this is a space galleon, and it is a space galleon is 130 feet long. So it occupies a 3x3 space at the 50-foot scale, 150 feet long. It's 130 feet. It occupies that 3x3 space. Conversely, a fighter craft occupies 5-foot spaces. This is a war skiff. So this is the helm. This is a harpoon flinger, and this is a ballista. Ballistas occupy a large object. They occupy a 10-foot space, which is a 2x2 space at the 5-foot scale. So this skiff, this combat skiff, is 20 feet in size. So it occupies a 4x4 space at the 5-foot scale. And then there's mixed squadrons. A mixed squadron is when you have craft and vessels in the same squadron. And they would occupy, this is at the 50-foot scale. You can see here that these little fighter craft, these elven flitter fighter craft, they occupy a 50-foot space unto themselves, while the Star Moth adjacent to it occupies a 4x4 space at the 50-foot scale. That is a 200-foot long ship, if you look it up in the Spelljammer's Adventures in Space. So, having said all that, knowing how reload dice work, that you have to hit the target number or exceed it, this is how vessels work. When a squadron of vessels hits with an attack, the damage and reload score are determined by whether the attack is a siege or a mounted weapon. Mounted weapons are like harpoon flingers, eldritch cannons that we talked about in previous episodes. Siege weapons are ballistas and mangonels, as well as like rams, like bludgeoning rams, piercing rams, slashing rams. These large size melee weapons that ships are equipped with. So siege weapon for a vessel, a siege weapon attack and damage. A squadron of vessels that hits with a siege weapon attack rolls a number of damage dice equal to the number of 50-foot spaces occupied by vessels, contributing to the attack up to 10. The siege weapon reload score is equal to the number of 50-foot spaces occupied by vessels, contributing to the attack minus the crew rank. So a third rank, so the rank of a crew, first rank crew rolls a D4 on damage, second rank crew is a D6, D8, D10, D12. That corresponds with the rank of the commander. A crew can't exceed the rank of a commander. If you have a 5th rank crew commanded by a 2nd rank commander, that 5th rank crew could do better, but the orders they're supposed to follow are sloppy because your commander's a low level. So they're only going to be able to do D6 efficiency, and they're only going to be able to reduce the reload score by 2. So in this example, a 3rd rank squadron of 3 space galleons. Here we have 3 space galleons. A 3rd rank crew, which is going to roll a D8, occupies a 9x9 space in a 500-foot square. These are 50-foot squares. It's a 10x10 space. These 3 ships, you can pack more than one squadron into a 50-foot space, and that's called tight formations, which is dealt separately. But just the basic mechanics of how this stuff works is a 9x9. So a squadron occupies a 9x9 space. It's a vessel squadron. There's 3 ships that occupy 9 spaces, so that's expressed as V39. If each of the vessels contribute to a squadron siege weapon attack that hits, since it's 3rd rank, it's rolling a D8. Since there's 9 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. it's going to do 98 and then multiply the damage by 10. And this attack would have a reload score of 6 because it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spaces occupied by the vessels minus the rank of the crew. So for you to have all 3 of these ships fire together once, presumably at another squadron or a fleet of ships that you're combating, is going to deal 98 times 10 damage. And if you roll a 6 or better on your reload score, you'll be able to have all 3 of these ships ready to fire again. If you botch that reload score, then you have to spend an action or a reaction for each ship to reset. This is literally 10 times larger in scale and damage than what an individual or 2 ballistas could do. But that's what this book is all about, increasing your scale so that you're affecting more things and having a larger impact in the world, from the 5-foot scale to the 50-foot scale to the 500-foot scale and beyond, all the way up to 100 million miles per day of occupying space. We're looking at Dominion and mass combat from a space warfare perspective as a space opera. So, and then there's mounted weapons like harpoon flingers and eldritch cannons that deal significantly less damage. So the rules for mounted weapons, siege weapons attack structures and ships, but they're too big to attack individual creatures. 5-foot scale creatures are just too small to effectively be attacked with siege weapons. There's rules about that in the combat section of this book that we've looked at in the past. You can check it out. So the mounted weapons are smaller scale weapons. They're anti-personnel weapons. They deal a lot of damage, but they're capable of targeting smaller creatures. So cover is obviously something that's important in this game, and having and protecting individual characters from being exposed to larger weapons is important. That's part of the game, and that's part of the fun of dealing with large-scale combat. So mounted weapons, anti-personnel weapons, attacking and damage. A squadron of vessels that hit with mounted weapons automatically deal 10 dice of damage. So the mounted weapons reload score is equal to the number of ships contributing to the attack minus the crew rank. So a 3rd rank squadron of 3 space galleons occupying the 9x9 space. Each ship is going to deal 10 dice of damage. So if each vessel contributing to a mounted weapon attack hits, it's going to be 3d8 times 10 damage. And because it's a 3rd rank crew, the reload score is going to equal each ship. So instead of doing 98 times 10 damage with a reload score of 6, it's going to drop to a 3d8 times 10 damage with a reload score of 1. And then it's impossible for you to miss. But mounted weapons can be fired multiple times per round by a single creature. They do by themselves, and we talked about this in the past, mounted weapons do 2d8 damage by themselves. This is straight out of Descent into Avernus. It's an anti-personnel weapon that were introduced on the Infernal War Machines as gunships to fight against each other that were piloting these vehicles. So we brought those into the Spelljammer game. So when you're dealing with a vessel that has a lot of mounted weapons on them, then it's very easy for a crew of like 20 people to just load up on mounted weapons, just be able to fire them over and over and over again. Hence the very low reload score. It's impossible for you to fail a reload score. But that's not going to do anything to large, like that's not a lot of damage to do to a large size ship, honestly. But this is 3 whole ships that's trying to do up to 240 damage, right? Considerably less than a 98 times 10 damage. But if you look at all the past streams that we've done, and we'll do a walkthrough on this once it publishes, you'll see that if you have like a squad, like these have 300 hit points, they have 300 hit points each. It's like this squadron has 900 hit points that it can absorb, plus whatever your crew is willing to take on in hit points to protect the ship as well. So 3d8 times 10 damage against 1,000, basically 1,000 points. It's going to be able to take a lot of those hits. So you can drill through a lot of ships using small scale weapons, or you can do big damage using squadrons. So I need to take this and translate it. So these bars that we have here are expressing, this is siege weapons. So I'm going to need to make, I think what I need to do is shapes here. I think what I need to do is create a shape here. It's going to say, let's go add text. Let's go with siege weapons. And then down here is the mounted weapons. So let's position these. This is the job. This is literally the job. Figuring out how to make these things sit. So what I'm going to do is we're going to switch this to black, and we're going to make the background no fill. And we're going to leave the background, we're going to leave the outline here so we can frame it. But once we're done with that, we'll be able to get rid of the outline, and then it's just going to be text that's just floating on the page. So we can go up here, we can center it. Good. And then blip, that's where it sits. And then we can do the same for up here. But for now, I'm going to leave the frame in place so we can just see where our navigation box is at, and we'll fix it later. So we can take this, we can copy this, we can take this, get rid of that. Siege weapons. You can see down here, the fighter craft are much smaller, so they calibrate differently. 2 skiffs, 8x8, first rank crew. A first rank crew does D4 damage in a squadron. The way that this works is a siege weapon, a squadron of craft that hits with a siege weapon attack rolls a number of damage dice equal to the number of craft contributing to the attack, and the siege weapon reload score is equal to the number of 5-foot spaces occupied by the craft contributing to the attack, minus the crew rank. So if we're looking at siege weapons, there's 2 ships. You can see there's 1, 2 siege weapons. So there's going to be contributing 1, 2, 2d4 times 10 damage. That's what we have, 2d4 times 10 damage. And since it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 8 minus the rank. That's going to be a 7. So the reload score is 7. And then if we go down to the mounted weapons, a squadron of craft that hits with a mounted weapon attack rolls a number of damage dice equal to the number of 5-foot spaces occupied by the craft up to 10. And then the mounted weapon reload score is equal to the number of ships contributing to the crew and minus the crew rank. So it occupies 8 squares. So the damage is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's going to be 8d8 it's the crew rank, so it's going to be 8d8 damage. Hold on, beep beep beep. Occupied by the craft. The mounted weapon. It should actually be 2d4. If both craft, it should actually be 8d4 damage. Is the accurate number, because it's a first rank crew. It should be a d4. Ironically, 8d4 equals 4d8. And each one of these mounted weapons by themselves do 2d8 damage. So unironically, 2 of these craft firing at the same time together doing 48, but because it's a first rank crew, it translates into 8d4. And because there's only 2 ships that are making the attack and they're combined together as a first rank crew, 1, 2 minus 1 equals a reload score of 1. It's impossible to not be able to have these ships reload, because a single creature can load and fire a harpoon flinger as often as they have attacks per round. That's straight out of Descendant of Avernus. It's pretty straightforward. So we've been able to successfully translate that and build a scaling method. But again, we have to be able to properly label this thing, and that is what we are in the process of doing right now. So now that you know how that works, what I can do is beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. There. Get that to center up. I can raise this up to, I want to have that. I'm using this line here as my bottom edge for the G and the P. So I'm going to use this line here as the bottom line for my P. So we can drop that down there to match frame. That feels good. And then we can duplicate this. Let's bring this up here. The letter V. How do I want to do this? Equals. What font size is this? This is the job. Style. Where's my center? Center. Where do we go from here? And we'll center this one as well. And we can do 3 minus first rank. I got my M dash over there, and I don't have it over here. There we go. Let's reduce this font size. How big do I need to freaking make this? There we go. Get rid of the outline. How does that look? Let's flip this down to Let's go with... That seems to be the right way to do this. There. I think that's going to fit nicely. 3 minus rank, 2 minus rank. There we go. Nice. And let's see. There, I can bottom edge there. That is properly centered. Nice. And then we'll do the same. Need to get that D. Over here it's going to be pretty good. What's this one? 98 times 10? I think that sits pretty. Nice. All right, keep it going. What time is it? 10:30? Cool, I still got an hour left this morning. Little pinched. I can scoot this down to here. Scooch this down to here. So let's scooch this down to here. And then I can scooch these down to center up here. Off a touch. There. Good. Yeah, I like how that sits. I could potentially just reduce this down to siege versus mounted. How does that feel? Ah, okay, that feels better. I think I'm okay with that spacing. I'm so silly. Ah, this is a non-problem. Hold on. So ridiculous. Let's fix all this. Go back to where it was. Obviously, the solution is to push these down inside this space, not outside of it. Sometimes you just can't see it, you know? Oh yeah, we can just do that. And suddenly life is super easy. Wow. Okay, cool. Oh, wait. Do that now and tick. There. You see, I'm centering this line. Yeah, I'm centering the M dash with the with the line that we have there, so it centers up. That looks pretty damn good. 98. There we go. Cool. I think this needs to get. No, that feels pretty good. I think this needs to get scooched a touch. This needs to get scooched a touch. One more scooch. Nice. Okay, so that's what we're doing. That's how it works. That is all I needed to do on this document for now. So I'm actually just gonna close out of this, and let's just do some more painting. So here is a quick diagram that we're creating of squadron movements. The way that fleets move, each one of these is a fleet. In the description here, fleet movement, when you command a fleet to move, all squadrons move the same distance in any direction together, up to 5 squares as detailed in the squadron commander section above. Each squadron in a fleet remains in a fixed position relative to other squadrons they are adjacent to, and the fleet can surge during movement while remaining in formation this way. Surge is when since you can go up to 10,000 miles per round or hover at 0 squares, or even just a rate of 5 square movement, and you get 5 squares worth of movement each move action that you take. So you get your object interaction as a pilot or as an issued command as a squadron commander, or in this instance, a fleet commander. You're effectively using your movement to move 5 squares, but that square of movement can be anywhere from 5-foot squares at a crawl while you're docking or boarding another ship, or it could be 10,000 miles. Sorry, a maximum speed is 10,000 miles per round. So a 5 squares could be 1,000 miles squares. So anywhere from 5-foot squares to 1,000 miles squares is the scale of difference that you can navigate your ship. And it's all the same action economy. It's just a matter of how focused do you need to be on not hitting things as you're moving around, right? So if the idea of surging is, even though we're on a in this instance here, we're on a 500-foot scale map where each square is 500 feet, I could move 10,000 miles I could move 1,000 miles as a single square. So when you are using a movement speed that's of a higher scale than the map depicts, it's called surging. And so each square of, like in this instance, a 500-foot square, if I were to spend 1 square of movement to surge, I would move 10 squares, because that would be 1 scale of magnitude larger than the 500-foot square scale map. It would effectively have your ship moving at a 1 mile square map, but you're navigating inside this 500-foot space, but you can move at that higher speed. So you could use 1 square of movement to move 10 squares. So up to 10 squares. So in this instance, we have 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is in a formation. And a formation is when any squadrons are adjacent to each other. They stay in that relative, like we just saw up here, in that relative fixed position. So now that we know what surging is, which is explained obviously in greater detail up above, each squadron in a fleet remains in a fixed position relative to the other squadrons they are adjacent to, and the fleet can surge during movement while remaining in formation this way. So in this instance, we've got, here's our formation, and then we have it breaking up. So then if a squadron moves to, let's see, individual squadrons can change position in the fleet to any square adjacent to another squadron as part of the fleet action. Each square of movement taken by a single squadron to change position in the fleet this way counts towards the 5 squares of fleet movement. And surging cannot be used to increase the amount of squares an individual squadron moves relative to other ships. If a squadron moves to a square that is not adjacent to any squadron in the fleet, it is removed from the fleet, and any remaining movement can be used by the fleet or the separate squadron, but not both. So, in this example, in the illustration below, a fleet of 5 squadrons is moving, in the illustration below, a fleet of 5 squadrons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is moving through an asteroid field here. Using 1 square of movement, the fleet surges forward 2,000 feet to a narrow gap between 2 asteroids, A. So here's A, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So here and here, here and here. And then using 3 squares of movement, 3 squadrons moves 1 square each to new adjacent positions, B, C, and D. So the whole fleet moves A. This one moves to here, 1 and 2 becomes 1 and 2, that's 1 square. So 1 square here, 2 squares here. C moves from 4 to 5, so 4 to 5, that's 3. And then this 5, D, moves to E, that's 4 squares. And then using 1 square of movement, a single squadron surges forward an additional 1,500 feet through the asteroids to scout ahead, E. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Blip, there you go. This one is now separated and scouting ahead. The commander of the fleet can then use an additional action for the remaining squadron to move through the asteroids to rejoin the scouts. So this whole column of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 could then also move forward in a surge 1, 2, 3 to reconnect to the ship, but you'd still have to navigate around these asteroids. So you'd have to continue eating action economy to move the squadron together as an entire fleet. Or you break up your action economy to have a move action to move some of the ships, and then you could use a dash action to order other ships to also move forward. So what we're doing right now, right here, is, since I explained all that, and that's what all these letters mean. That's probably the most complicated concept inside of the game, which I don't blame Wizards for not even attempting to tackle. As far as I know, I don't know of any other game system that's attempted to express this stuff this way. You know, if this is clumsy, maybe eventually we'll find a better way of putting it. But this is the best way I've found of expressing this so far. So hopefully it's good enough. But right now, we're just going to spend the remaining time cleaning up and improving the quality of these asteroids. So this is what we're doing now. Yeah, surging is a complicated concept. It's you have to understand how scaling works, how the movement inside scaling works, and that's an instance of your ability to manipulate that scale and movement together with your action economy. These are all optional rules. Obviously, you can ignore the idea of surging if you want to, but it makes navigation with multiple ships as well as your individual ship. Instances arise where you're like, can I move that extra space? That doesn't seem realistic that I wouldn't be able to do that. It's like, well, the answer is surging. And then it clicks into place for you, hopefully. If you're checking this out and that makes, let me know in the comments below if this stuff makes sense. This is the the third take on these mechanics. It was expressed more clumsily in the past. As far as I can tell, this is the most efficient way of us expressing these mechanics that we have so far, which is a shame. It's such a in-depth mechanical idea, but we don't get to this until the. By this point, you're on the 43rd page of the document, and these are the most like all the background. Like, I closed the document. I shouldn't have closed the document. Hold on. We spent a lot of time in the document ahead of this. I'm going to wait for this thing to stop thinking so hard. There we go. Whew. We spent a lot of time in the document talking about movement scales, how large ships are is in the equipment section of the pre-generated ships that are available in the document, how you build them, the cost of building them. And then right up front here on page 12 of combat, that's when we start talking about scale of movement, scale of squares. The ship combat map, talking about the differences in scaling of size, what you can do at the different size scale, depicting scale during combat. Obviously, all the illustrations are missing here, but it's talking about integrating like how to scale between 550 and 5 foot scale during combat, shifting scale from the 500. Here, let's do better. Combat done. Here you go. So you can see what we're talking about here. $500-foot scale. These are 500-foot squares. Regardless of this being a craft or a vessel, at the 500-foot scale, kind of like how a pixie. A pixie's only 2 feet tall, but when you depict it on a dungeon map with 5-foot squares, the pixie's filling that space. You just need to know it's tiny sized, because the scale gets distorted because of the resolution of the squares that you're using. Same thing here. 500-foot scale, any ship can fit inside a 500-foot space. 50-foot scale, you can see the difference. Fighter craft fit into a 50-foot square, while vessels fit in multiple 50-foot squares. And here at the 5-foot scale, you can see true size of objects. So you can see the ballista on the back of this fighter craft. This fighter craft's decked out. It's got an Eldritch cannon. It's got 2 harpoon flingers. It's got a ballista, and it has carrying capacity for about a dozen soldiers inside of it. And when you look at the craft, the craft schematics that we provide with the book and the zip file, this back end opens up and troops can deploy out of here. If this were to be a luxury craft, it wouldn't need to have so much combat stuff on it. It might still have the Eldritch cannon in the front nose, but it would also have a tarped roof, like a pavilion on top of it, like a howdah. And instead of having troop space inside of here, you could have a kitchenette, a small apartment unit in here, and then you have a ladder here that goes topside deck into the interior. And we have all the stuff about that inside of the craft section. But here at the 5-foot scale, a hammerhead ship is 250 feet long. Each one of these squares is an inch on a map in physical space. So this is like 25, 50 squares. So that's a 4-foot long map that you would need. It's a lot of space is going to eat up at the kitchen table. So what we're doing is we're breaking these things up into 10-foot squares. So you'd have a 10-foot space here, a 10-foot space here, a 10-foot space here, a 10-foot space here, and a 10-foot space here. So you can lay down tiles of the ships occupying 10-foot spaces. Since this fighter craft is in a 10 by 10 space, this would be able to sit inside of its own tile by itself. So that's part of the process, and stuff that I do off screen is processing all these little assets into a zip folder so that when the book publishes, if you buy it, you'll get all the ship tokens at the 555-foot scale, all the creatures, all the ship, all the NPCs in the Lies of Axis adventure, blah, 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 blah. But you can see how the scale works and how you can have these things sit next to each other. So here is an example of changing scale on a map. Here's a 500-foot scale. Here's individual ships that are fighting at the 500-foot scale. Here's a giant 1-mile size asteroid base. Spoiler alert for those that are playing Lies of Axis. This is how we can depict a fleet combat these ships are adjacent to each other, that would be one fleet. These ships are adjacent to each other, that's another fleet. While the DM would be commanding these 5 ships, that's in a fleet. And these 3 ships are in a fleet. So this would be, you could have this attack as 1 unit, you could have this attack as 1 unit, you can have this attack as 1 unit, and you can have this attack as unit. So you could have like 2 characters commanding these ships, sharing their action economy to move, fire, reload, and fire again, dealing hundreds of damage on a shot. Each one of these flitter ships have 500 damage each, so you could potentially, like this squadron doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 of these things. If you have them all fire as a fleet together, as a mixed squadron, it would be 5. That's 20. That'd be what? Second rank crew would be rolling a d6. That'd be like 20 d6 times 10 dice. Or you could break it up into like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could break them up into separate attacks. So you'd be doing like 8d6 times 10, and then this would be doing 12d6 times 10 as separate attacks. And then these 3 could be doing 12d6 times 10 attack against targets that can take 400 points of damage. So if this fleet attacks here, and I hit this row, then if I hit them and I do like say 700 damage, I could distribute that 700 damage as the defender. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That 700 damage, I could do like 120 damage to each of these ships. Or I could just let this ship get destroyed and like say, since there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ships in this fleet, and they fire at this fleet, then I can distribute the damage equally. As long as each ship takes some damage, I can distribute the damage as I please. Evenly, it'd be 120. They could take another 2 or 3 shots like that before they get dropped. That's rough. And then you can zoom in. So you're here at the 500-foot scale. When these ships are adjacent to each other, you can then zoom into a closer scale. You can see inside of the squadron that, hey, here's multiple ships, 1, 2, and then you have a squadron of the Star Maws that with little fighter craft that are going alongside. If this little fighter craft here advances and closes distance with this ship, you can now see that it's on deck of that craft and it's now deploying soldiers onto your deck. It can then start to attack characters at the 5-foot scale aboard this vessel. And you can see here 1, 2, 3. I only needed 3 tiles from this hammerhead ship for me to be able to depict the battle of this boarding craft. Meanwhile, while your characters are fighting here, making attacks and bonus actions, reactions, fighting this crew aboard your ship, you still have action economy that you can spend with these 2 ships attacking this squadron, or you can scale out and use your action economy to attack these, or you can mix them. A 13th level fighter could attack, like I could take a shot with my longbow at this commander. I could issue a command for both of these hammerhead ships to fire on, say, this Star Moth to destroy it. And then my third attack, I could order all 5 of these ships together to then fire on this full squadron lining up back here or along here. So I've got 1 attack, 2 attacks, 3 attacks, and then if I have other characters on my team, another character on the team could order these 2 ships to reload as their own actions and reactions. A third character could then take command of this squadron and order them to reload and fire again, depending on how your action economy susses out, as we discussed earlier today. A lot of moving pieces, but again, we're dealing with really large scale stuff, so we try to break down the information as much as possible with as much visual information as possible so that you can see how these things all curve together. And God's willing, folks get it. So here's our you can see how ships can shifting scale again, moving between the 500-foot scale to the 50-foot scale to the 5-foot scale. We again see troops deploying from one ship onto another. That's how you can see the object interaction happen here at these different scales. Opening up another window here. Now you can see if we're shifting scale for ships boarding another, we have this little fighter craft here. Starting off here, the mile size, this fighter craft is approaching at the 500-foot scale, so it seems unusually large. But as it settles into this space to land, we can then scale into the 50-foot scale here. So you can see this craft approaching. We're now at the 50-foot scale. These are buildings that are on the back of this fortress. These maps are included with this adventure, by the way, at the proper scale. And then you can zoom in again to the 5-foot scale, and you can see here 5-foot squares. Characters can get on and off the craft, and then take off, rising to the 50-foot scale to start moving away from the buildings. At the 500-foot scale here, they've moved far enough away from the structure, and then from there, they can just fly away. There you go. And here again, we see shifting scale between craft. This is talking about ships moving at the same speed together instead of like this last map we're looking at here. This is a relatively stationary object that this skiff is landing on. So your scaling change of movement is closing distance to land. In this page, we're explaining how you can have chases and pursuits. And since both ships are moving roughly 100 million miles per day in the same direction, the fractional 500-foot or 1 mile scale or 50-foot scale or 5-foot scale is inconsequential to moving 10,000 miles per round overall. So you can have tactical distance while ships are moving in the same direction. So you can see here at the 500-foot scale, you can close distance by just using your movement to close distance with the ship. You can then scale in to the 50-foot scale here, continuing to fly in the same direction. The Star Moth is closing distance with the galleon ship here while you're still flying in the same relative direction. But then over here, you can see the same scaling of distance, and with this squadron here with this citadel on the map being a relatively stable fixed position, this map is stationary. But as these two ships close distance here, you can see that they're closing scale to the 50-foot scale here from the 500-foot scale. These are two relatives, so this 10 by 10 square is a separate map that you can place separately from this 10 by 10 map. And when you have these two ships at the 500-foot scale get adjacent to each other so you can engage in ship combat between the two of them, you can just drop them into a separate map alongside your board. This is a 10 by 10 map on your table, and these are separate 10 by 10. So this whole array here, this battle at this larger scale, if your team is on this hammerhead ship, this is the only ship that matters in the large scale of things when you're scaling damage. So you could be ordering tactical combat at this scale among these ships here if you wanted to, and use this 10-foot scale, this 500-foot scale 10 by 10 square map as a separate map on your table to depict this battle playing out in front of or atop this fortress. And then when you get within a close range of combat on the ship that you're aboard, you then bring out a separate 10 by 10 map, and you can just replace this one with a new map. Each of these Star Moths can have their own 10 by 10 map. So when this Star Moth gets destroyed, you just throw that map away and you replace it with another Star Moth. This one has its own 10 by 10 map. This has its own 10 by 10 map, 10 by 10 map. Oh, it looks like I need to add a circle to this guy. That's funny. Let's fix that real quick. Hold on. Hey, what's up? There we go. Dropkick babies. What is up, my guy? Did you get all this? Did this shit make sense? I mean, I'm like streaking through it, but if you're kind of grokking the idea, then all this text and shit dives into it. Fuck yes. Every time I ran across this, everyone gets it. So I think this shit works. So I'm pretty fucking excited, man. This is yeah. The mass combat system I have, this actually started as a mass combat system for troops. where you would organize characters or creatures into squadrons, and then you would have them. But their movement speed is so much slower. Like if you wanted to march a troop 1 mile, it would take 10 minutes for them to move. So you move first, 10 minutes, and then you make your attacks at the end of the round. And if nobody moves, you just zoom in to the 6-second round where these two platoons are engaging in combat. And if they want to break away from the other, they can make attacks and then break away. And they'll take attacks of opportunity for disengaging, but then you scale back out to the 10-minute scale to be able to move those troops across the battlefield. I've done this for Horde of the Dragon Queen. I did a Blood War siege on the city of Elturel in Descent into Avernus. That was an amazing playtest. As well as Dragonlance, the Dragonlance army in Sarlona. I can break down Sarlona into 100-mile squares, and we could do a risk tactical battle of Takisas' army versus the Solamnia Knights at a huge scale. Your character commands a single platoon of like, say, 20 troops in a 50-foot square. But as you gain levels, you get larger and larger amounts of troops until your characters are the generals that lead the entire nation in war against Takisas. It would take me literally years to build that out into a full campaign. But if I accumulate enough followers that are willing to kickstart a project like that, just basically to fund me to build it, I'll eventually be able to do that. But for now, Spelljammer is the absolute best way to introduce this stuff, because the speed that these ships can move, anywhere from hovering to 100 million miles per day, and to be able to scale in between them from 5 feet per round to 1,000 miles per round, it allows us to have this fast, dynamic movement scaling interaction that then, as we get to things that are more limited in their ability, like Descent into Avernus has the Mad Max trucks. We'd successfully built a convoy combat system, and just as we had finished playtesting that in Descent into Avernus, Spelljammer dropped in August 2022. It's like, okay, great. We can use all these mechanics and just scale them up for fleet mechanics and stuff in Spelljammer, and then 106 pages and a bunch of playtesting later, we've now finished all of those mechanics, and I'm about maybe 2 or 3 weeks away from finishing it, and we'll publish on DMsGuild, and all this shit will be out there for folks to chew on. So right now, I've just been walking through this stuff, obviously. So let me go ahead and lock down this layer again. I'm pretty fucking proud of this. It works incredibly well. It works incredibly well. So then the fleet movement's a little bit more complicated, obviously, because you have to keep each squadron in position with each other, and the rules are there's more complicated rules. But as you go through all that stuff in the beginning, it just filters into more and more specifics, and the further down into specific information you get, the more and more optional the rules become. If you don't want to fuck around with fleets, you don't need fleets. But Light of Zaraxis Adventure has a fleet of like 40 Star Moths versus 30 allied ships. And the way that Wizards resolves is like, just forget about it. It's just in the background. It's just background noise. You just focus on your characters being boarded and attacking a dragon that lands on the deck of your ship. Go fight that with your sword. You can do that, but while you're doing that, you can also be commanding the entire fleet. And the way that I have it structured at the back end of this document is looking at scenarios, different win state and fail state scenarios of that fleet battle. Different places that you can land on the Citadel of Light so that you can storm the temple. There's options for attacking, like if you defeat enough Star Moths that you have enough of a fleet left over, you can just start attacking the temple directly to destroy the temple and everyone inside of it. So you cut off the supply chain from the sun, and then you cause the whole thing to die. That is one fail. That is one success solution. If you if enough of your if enough of the ships get scrapped in your armada, then you may have to eject as a rescue ship and then crash somewhere on the Citadel and then fight your way through the Citadel to get to the temple. You can land on the bottom half of the Citadel, which doesn't exist currently. But hold on, I'll show you that one. I'm really happy about that one. Let's go out here to what the hell? What is that? What did I just do? What is that? What the fuck just happened here? Tell you what, I'm gonna save. I'm gonna try closing and see if that goes away. Does anyone know what the hell that is? What a display capture. Oh my god, how fascinating. Debug log. Interesting. Hold on. Let's remove. Are you sure you want to remove debug? Yes? Wow, that was crazy. The more you know. All right, let's relaunch Photoshop. Organized chaos, my guys. It is 11:03. I've got about 20 some odd minutes left. That's cool. Let's see. Beep, beep, beep. And then I've got brunch with my gal lined up, so we'll be doing that. But let me open this back up, and I'll show you the underbelly of the Citadel, and then I'll get back to work on painting asteroids. Let's go to interior images. Let's go to our production pipeline. Oh, there it was. Interior tokens, cover, interior pages, light as Araxis, Citadel of Light. Here it is. This is included with the document in a zip file. Bottom. Here's the bottom. So here's the top of it. And these are trebuchet towers. There's 3 trebuchets, so they do 3d8 times 10 damage to anything that they hit. And they're commanded by, I think, a second rank commander. So, and they have a normal range of 1,500 feet. So at the 500-foot scale, that's 1, 2, 3 squares away. So anything that gets within 3 squares of this it can be targeted at normal range to take 3d8 damage. Anything up to a mile away, which is 10 squares, can be attacked at disadvantage. And if you're more than a mile away, you automatically miss because you can literally see it coming a mile away. All you gotta do is just shift a little bit, and like it's a non-action for you just to shift your ship a little bit to be offline. If you don't see an attack coming, you can still be hit. It'll still be at disadvantage. But if the target doesn't know you're there, it can get hit, which is a hazard in space. Being hit by just random debris. Like if you cross through a war zone, there is a possibility that there's enough momentum in stray weapon fire that if you stumble into it, you'll get hit as though like by a spear trap. You know, like a dart trap shooting out of the walls like in Indiana Jones. If you go into a war zone, there could just be random debris still flying at a speed fast enough. And we have tables that show, based on the size of the object and its initial damage amount, is how long it takes for it to slow to a stop. You could fire an arrow, and it takes like an hour for it to eventually drift to a stop. But a ballista bolt I believe it takes 10 hours for that to drift to a stop. So I'd have to look at the table, but I'm not going to look it up right now. But we have all that stuff there. So if you walk into danger zones, you can just stumble into and have to make dexterity saving throws if you don't know that the threat is there. If you can see it coming, if you spot it, like if you have a really high spot check or a passive perception check, the passive perception check becomes the armor class to hit you. If you don't see it coming, you get nailed. If you see it coming, you can then make a saving throw to dodge it. But you have to see it coming. So, fun stuff. But yeah, so here you zoom in. Here's where the Temple of Light is. We have a damage scale on structures based on size. So if you want it, like one of the scenarios we had, you would grab asteroids and then fling asteroids at the base, dealing D8 times 1,000 damage per hit. And if the Citadel of Light here can take 20,000 points of damage, you're going to have to hit it with a couple different asteroids. So you can work out, we have towing weight capacities for ships that can be combined in fleets. So you can take a fleet of 30 ships and pull a 500,000 ton rock behind you to then lob at it and then just knock out the entire structure here. If your team comes up with that solution, chef's kiss. Otherwise, you're gonna have to run and gun through it. Or you could have the armada fighting, and you could jump on a small craft and land on the underbelly in the forest. Land your craft, crawl through the forest, go down this ravine, and then jump gravity to the top side, bloop, and then you're ended up right on the Citadel as a small strike force that's too small to be noticed. A lot of different ways you can play this scenario if you have the game physics that let you play out those scenarios. So that's what we're trying to express with this stuff. And that just opens up a huge array of different cool things you can do. So hopefully people will embrace the idea and really get into it. So we're on our last 20-minute kick here, so I'm just going to work on the detail of these asteroids in this example here. It's Workbench Saturday. I do whatever's on my mind, and I was the earlier in the session, for folks that are just jumping on board. If you check out that earlier session, you'll see the me integrating the image of this into the page and then dropping text on it to build things out, to explain how the mounted and siege weapon damage works on ships, and it's all just scales and multipliers, and yeah. So it all uses the exact same action economy as you're used to at the 5-foot scale in normal D&D, but you're blowing out to 50 and 500-foot scale combat with ships that have tens or hundreds of a number of hit points that your characters have. So it all just kind of scales together. And then there's rules of engagement where these massive weapons can't target individual creatures except under very specific circumstances, so that you aren't just taking 98 times 10 damage and shooting a dragon. It's like, normally that dragon's going to not be targetable by an entire fleet of ships unless you catch them like really out of position, or they're large enough to be able to engage at that scale. So like we can have dragons that are 3 miles long and conduct a combat with them effectively using the mechanics that we already have in the system. Keeping in mind, like the Tarrasque is only like a 50 by 70 foot creature. It only occupies a 2 by 2 space at the 50-foot scale. The Tarrasque deals about as much and can take as much damage as a Spelljammer ship. It just has a lot of extra protections on it. But Tarrasques ain't no big thing when you have a bunch of, giant ships. So if you wanted to have a fun challenge, you could give your Tarrasque wings and then have a Tarrasque migration pattern in Doom Space where you run across 50 flying Tarrasques. And while you're trying to assemble a fleet in Doom Space to attack the Citadel of Light, you now have to deal with a swarm of 50 Tarrasques coming at your fleet for food. Well, we're going to have to run and gun and shoot them down, and let's lay 50 ballistas into those fuckers and see if we can kill them off before they eat our ships. And that becomes an interesting challenge. That's beyond the scale of what we have in this adventure, in this published piece. But that is something that I could easily build out into, like, say, just like a 15-page throwaway, and then post it on, and then like use it as a discount coupon, like make it $5, and then like if you buy it, it like reduces the cost of everything by $5, that sort of thing. Kind of like if you check out the Color Mana Spell Point Variant Rule Bundle that I have linked down below, it's got like 6 books in it, and across all those books, it's about 50% off. And half of them are pay what you want. So if you wanted to really milk the system, you could end up, buying like $35 worth of books for like $15. So, but but I tend to find that when people grab a couple of my books for free, they eventually come back around, like within a week or two, and buy all the other books at regular cost. It's amazing the amount of support that I've been seeing with these books for people that like the shit that I deal with. But Color Mana is a super niche audience. Spelljammer is also a niche audience, but it's got at least broader appeal than MTG does. And then when I eventually get into the mass warfare and the domain squad, the guilds and kingdom mechanics to run kingdoms in that same sort of idea, I'll probably kickstart that as an independent Creative Commons, like a Creative Commons content piece that'll be open license for other people to use. But if I can get a Kickstarter that lands me $30,000 for doing it. Like, if I slow cook all this, I'll eventually have a large enough collection of folks that get what I do, that are willing to throw a couple bucks at things that I do, that I can start reliably building Kickstarters. And so instead of building a book and talking about it and publishing it and seeing if people will buy it, if I do a Kickstarter, I can have like maybe 200 people buy in on it, and then I stream the whole thing. Since I'm at episode, where are we at? episode 284 right now, and then the Eberron adventure is at episode 170 something, and the Martial Powers project just crossed over to episode 104. Obviously, I've got the endurance and chops to be able to build long wind form documents like this, so I can actually use these streams as examples of, what's the risks of completing this Kickstarter project. Well, it's going to be an open playtest that you'll be able to grab off my Patreon, just like everything else that I have right now. And I'll be streaming the development and all the artwork on stream here. I've got a Discord channel that I'm opening on Tuesday so that people can actively discuss and push back at things that seem difficult to help simplify the process. And I could have tier levels where people are able to offer suggestions of what kind of artwork they want to see on different pages as rewards. Blah, 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 blah. And I'll keep it stupid simple, just like PDFs, maybe a print, but nothing complicated, no weird dice or kicker cool tokens or whatever. Like, just whatever I can build by hand myself will be part of the document. Maybe I'll hire somebody to help make sure that a print piece can be done properly, But I want to keep it simple. I just want to build good tools that work well for people, that help expand what they do with their game. All these mechanics can be used, basically, the concept of these mechanics can be used in literally any game that deals with large-scale movement. And so, hopefully, I can redo this outside of Wizards of the Coast as a separate Kickstarter for just a more generic spacefaring combat, and just change up the words, the language, and how to express it, because they can't copy. I can publish the ideas anywhere that I want. I have to change what the IP is and how I express it, and like the words have to change. But I can still do this again, like for Lancer. I can do this again for Pathfinder, for Starfinder. Blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. And now I'm falling down a rabbit hole of geeking out over my own potential future stuff. But yeah, this is how I cook. This is me cooking. And I'm just adding texture in here to these rocks so they just feel a little bit more, a little bit more realistic. Up the size on that a bit. I got about 10 some odd minutes left for today's stream. So, what's my schedule looking like this week? Oh my God, I'm so excited. All right, so I don't stream on Sunday, but I've already created a recording talking about spelljamming ships flying inside of the atmosphere of a planet, and more practical rules for escaping orbit. I've already got that built. I already got the card. It's ready to go. I have it uploaded, and that will publish tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Just like all my other tear-outs do. I have something published right now. I've been publishing something once a week, every week on Sunday at 9 a.m. This will be no different. Monday is a holiday for folks that celebrate Christmas, my family included, so I shan't be on Monday as usual. But I have the rest of the week off. So I'll be streaming maybe 3 or 4 hours on Tuesday morning. I'll take a break. I'll come back and stream at lunchtime. And then I'll come back on Wednesday, a couple hours in the morning, take a break, come back, stream a number of hours in the afternoon, jump off. And then on Thursday, a number of hours in the morning, a number of hours at lunchtime, and then a number of hours in the at lunchtime in the evening, and then on Friday a number of hours in the morning, a number of hours at lunch, and then I'll step off, and then Saturday will be like this again, and we'll be back. And then I have Monday the 1st off. I don't know if I'm doing anything on the 1st. If I'm not doing anything with family on the 1st, I'll jump on stream a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours at lunch, a couple hours at night, and then on Tuesday we'll return to our normal program. So I'm going to be finishing up the mounted weapon illustration that I've been working on in the past 2 weeks in the morning. And so when we jump back on Monday, I will be working on a new painting in the combat chapter. I am currently off screen. I am working on the layouts and token placement of the art assets for the Light of Zaraxis conversion, which is the back 25 pages of this book. So we built, it's 106 pages currently. I'm not sure how much page space the Light of Zaraxis conversion guide is eventually going to eat up, but probably around 25, 26 pages. So the first 80 pages are all of these mechanics on combat, exploration, downtime activities, and conducting campaigns in the Spelljammer system. And then the back 25 some odd pages is taking all those rules and showing you how you can apply them to the Light of Zaraxis adventure, just to basically showcase how it works so that a DM can kind of get an idea of how they can start integrating this stuff into their own game. And once this thing publishes, probably at the tail end of January, then this whole project drops off my plate, and we'll do Eberron art in the morning, and my evenings will be freed up for me to continue developing the Martial Powers project. Once we get done with playtesting with that, probably around June, that's when we're going to start doing layouts, hire an editor to make sure we clean up the text on it, and we'll be doing, by then, the Eberron adventure will have published. So my morning project will be doing all the artwork, the book cover, all the interior artwork for the Martial Powers book, featuring like Avatar Airbender type art, Ravnica art, Strixhaven art, whatever it is that we want to build out to express characters with martial powers basically kicking the crap out of stuff on combat. And once that, and then that'd be the only project on my plate. So by June next year, I'll be building out supplements. I'll be building little tear out books like the Escaflowne mecha combat book for this, like Warforged Mecha Combat. Where you have like 500-foot Warforged Titans that are basically the size of a ship, using the same action economy and the same combat mechanics that we use, but instead of being shaped like an animal, it's shaped like a giant humanoid, carrying a 200-foot long sword, cutting into 5,000-foot long dragons, and we can just upscale, and your kaiju combat gets insane. So then we can start talking about kaiju combat, scaling from the 1 mile scale, 50-foot scale, 1 mile, 500, 50, and 5-foot scale, and how can you fight kaiju at different scales of battles? Like, well, I'm going to drop my Guyver onto the back of the ship and stick my flaming sword into its back and deal a couple hundred damage. But if I really want to take this thing out, maybe I want to disembark from my ship and take a small crew and go into the thing's ear and then start dropping fireballs into its brain, so I can kill it inside of itself instead of trying to hack away at the armor on the outside. We have mechanics inside this book already that lets you do that, but you have to like squint your eye and look at it a little bit because it's not spelled out. This is specifically dealing with space combat, but once these mechanics are published, we can then come back. It's like, hey, you want to have a 500-foot giant, and you actually want to fight it like actual Glory of the Giants? Well, then cool, let's do that. Let's put you in a Guyver suit and have you pretend. I don't know if anybody saw the old Robotech TV show, but these 50-foot Robotech Valkyries that would transform into humanoid robot battlers fighting Zentradi, which are 50-foot tall giants themselves. At one point, a Veritech Valkyrie got aboard, and it donned the outfit of a soldier and put the cap down low. And as long as nobody looked it in the face, they couldn't tell that it was a giant robot walking around in a Zentradi suit. That's the same kind of shit you can do with giants if that's the scale of giants that you have to operate with. But 5e, Wizards of the Coast, hasn't invested the development time to be able to do these things, so they can't really express giant combat at the 50 or 500-foot scale. Even though the cover of the book has a 200-foot tall giant, they don't have any way of expressing a 200-foot giant in the game other than it's gargantuan. But they can't deal with scale or the consequences of dealing with scale. That's what we've spent the last year diving into with this book. So it opens up a massive amount of gameplay and game styles that lets you look at Dominion, warfare, mass combat, giant scale vehicles, all of it using the same mechanical language of 5e combat with all the mechanics that we have built into this book to be able to operate at those larger scales. It's all here. And again, all the content, my previews are extensive, so when you see the book, you can check out how that stuff works. So that's what we'll be doing for the next 4 years. So if you're into that kind of shit, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, because I'll be around. The only thing that's going to stop me is death. There's nothing that can stop me, because obviously I have the chops to be able to, I mean, I have other books that are 75 pages. This is the first book that I'm creating that's more than 100 pages. The Ebron book will probably be about 100 pages. The Martial Powers book will probably be about 100 pages. So the next book that I could do, I could realistically scale up to 200, but I could do a 40-page book a lot easier now, because my own sense of scale is expanded so much, of like the scale of project that I'm capable of successfully producing. We have a really good engine here that we can keep building things over the next decade or so. However long God allows me to play, I'll keep building stuff for you guys to fuck around with. And the mechanics are portable, so I could do all this for Cypher System if I wanted to. And if 5e ever goes sour, or if WotC no longer invites me to build using their IPs, I'll just switch over to Cypher System and I'll just start doing stuff there. There's also the Year Zero system. I've got ideas for doing stuff Vaesen adjacent that are of interest to me, that I've been percolating for a while, and the Year Zero system seems to be something that I would be able to integrate into some of the more philosophical based campaign ideas that I have, that Vaesen I think would probably be able to express more elegantly than what 5e mechanics could do. So I'll probably be stretching the Vaesen and maybe Cypher System in the next 4 years. But I've got a lot of stuff I want to do with Magic the Gathering still, which is a captive IP for Wizards. So the marketplace for doing that is DMsGuild. Spelljammer, I'm absolutely in love with both Spelljammer and Planescape, and I have been since the 90s. And again, those are also Wizard IPs, so the place to publish those right now is also still the DMsGuild. But we don't know what Wizards is. They just fired the guy that built the DMsGuild in the first place, so we don't know if the DMsGuild is even going to be here a year from now. So I'm just trying to get stuff done that needs to get done while it still lasts, before we find out what the next iteration of reality is going to be. And I'll just shift and adapt accordingly. But while I get to play in this IP, I'm going to keep using it, because this is what I dreamt of doing since I was 12 years old, making cool D&D books and showing off the kind of shit that I think about. And after 35 years of running games in D&D, this is the kind of shit I think about. So I am fulfilling my creative fantasies of a 12-year-old child. It took 40 years for me to get here, but I'm here now, and I think 12-year-old me would just absolutely be geeking out over this crap. And so this is a love letter to myself as a child, to myself as a budding DM, as somebody that just got excited in D&D. This is my salute and celebration of having had the opportunity to fall into this art as early as I had. And to celebrate where it's led me over the course of the past 35 years. But we are damn near out of time. We're down to about a minute, so I'm just fucking around. I'm just pushing pixels. I'm pretty happy with how all these asteroids look already. Right now, I'm just messing around and shooting the shit, because I don't have anything else. I didn't have anything else planned for today, other than doing that text work in the Word document. So this is just kind of bonus time for me, just to yap about stuff and geek out about things and shoot the shit with friends. So, but yep, there's going to be the atmospheric movement scaling mechanics for flying inside the atmosphere. That's going to publish tomorrow. I think we're looking. I'm not sure what our Monday public. I was originally looking at like hazards and fires. I'm not sure if that's what we're going to have for Monday. But when I'm done with stream here and I finish having brunch, I'll have a couple hours to sit down and build out that Monday document, or that Monday video, so that I have stuff on Monday, even though I won't be around. And then we'll be able to dive back into all this stuff on Tuesday as usual, with extended time because of my vacationing. So, but I've really enjoyed my time. Give you guys an opportunity to, at the beginning of this stream, you'll see me going through the process of integrating artwork into the page of the document, and you'll see how that process flows. So that's it for now. I'm going to wrap up my day here. So thanks a lot. Babies, man, thanks for dropping by. Pardon the pun. Cat up earlier on. Appreciate you guys. Anybody out there in the future, Reddit channels, Discords, Twitters. Thanks a lot for everyone checking this stuff out. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for more of this stuff in the future. And yeah, man. Hey, thanks for being a shadow, man. I appreciate you hanging out in the background. Thanks a lot, dude. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the other side. Thanks a lot. I'll be back on Tuesday. Check out my videos tomorrow and on Monday. Bye.